first thing, what were you doing before the war broke out?
I was a child.
So, and where were you born?
Żarki, Z-A-R-K-I, in Poland. Do you want the city also?
Yes,
Well, this is the name of the town. It's a small town, and it's called Żarki, Z-A-R-K-I.
How many were in your family?
There was a smaller sister. She was a baby. As a matter of fact, she was born 4 weeks before the war broke out. She was an infant. And she was killed in Auschwitz. In fact, there's a very interesting story when we get to it as to my sister, because my mother's under the impression she's alive in Germany for a very good reason, and we don't know about it. We are waiting, hoping that Mengele, you have heard of Dr. Mengele, and we are hoping that he is alive. Well, we know he is alive, but we are hoping that he'll be caught, because he was he was the instrumental person in her death or life or whatever, because in the selection in Auschwitz. However, I don't want to start from the middle. Maybe this isn't the place to start with it. But we do think that she is alive, because there was a witness during the... she was, again, it's in the middle. She was in a hospital. She was a very, very beautiful girl, very beautiful child. Everybody called her Shirley Temple, because she looked exactly like Shirley Temple, with the big curls and dimples, adorable. And so one of the, well, I don't need to tell you how it was in Auschwitz, that it was very, very bad. And she was the only, as a matter of fact, I was also the only child. We were the only transport coming in that was allowed with children, then one and only. There were no others, because normally, as you know, they did not allow children in Auschwitz. But for some reason or other, why it was, we don't know. But they permitted us all into Auschwitz with children. And they gave us number, and you see, as you can see, I have a number, and my sister's number was, I have 91 to 92. My mother's 90. Well, there's a difference with one number. I don't remember whether my mother is 90 or she...
About what year was this?
In Auschwitz we were, I think, it's funny, I have to look each time.
It's all right.
Żarki, Ghetto, 41 to 42. And it was Auschwitz, it was in 1944. The 7th month is what? That's August? No, 7th. In the summer of, say, summer of 44.
What were your parents' occupations?
Business. My father had a leather goods wholesale for the area, surrounding area.
Did you belong to any groups?
I did not. I was a child, so I didn't belong to any place except playing with my friends.
Do you remember the circumstances of your arrest?
Well, it was not an arrest. You can't really call it an arrest. It was other than that. It was just like you gather cattle, more of that sort of thing, because it wasn't an individual arrest. Well, first we were in a ghetto.
Which ghetto?
In our hometown.
Do you know the name?
Żarki. Z-A-R-K-I. And there were selections during the years there for, they sent out, like my grandparents, most of my relatives were sent to the crematoriums before we did, way before. I don't remember what year, it was like 1941 or 42, my grandparents, and we found out they shot them. They were shot on the way to the, I think they were sent to Majdanek, is the name of the place. But one of the assessment that was in our town boasted that he killed them on the way. He made it sound he didn't want them to suffer because they were old people, so he made it sound it was as a humanitarian gesture that he killed them. We were in the ghetto. In the ghetto it was still livable. I mean, it wasn't, when you compare it with a concentration camp and all, it was people were shot, and it was bad, but relatively, in comparison to what followed, this was still paradise. But then in 1941, we were in Żarki ghetto until 1941, from 1941 till October 1941, we were in Żarki ghetto. And then they sent us to, they gathered all the remaining Jews, those that were left in the town, to the big synagogue. We were gathered into the synagogue like cattle. They closed us in over there. I'll tell you, it's funny that a lot of these recollections are fuzzy and vague. I don't quite, it comes back, but I suppose my mother remembers much better, much more vivid everything than I. It's funny that certain episodes are very, very vivid, and some are just blacked out partially. And then we were sent from there, together with my father, my mother, my sister, myself, to Pionki. Pionki was a working camp. It was not a concentration camp where they had gas chambers. It was actually a camp where people worked. Now, I was very young at the time. However, they gave me very hard labor. We were working, they had ammunition factories there. And we were walking every day back and forth. They had Jewish police and mostly Ukrainian. There were no actually Germans in the camp that took care of the camp itself. It was all Ukrainians, and they were very bad. As a matter of fact, in many instances, they were ruthless, rough, very, very bad. I don't know if you can say worse than the Germans, because how worse can it get? But in a different manner, very, very ruthless. These are rough guys, very uneducated, very common, and they were really rough. So they were walking with us. We had to walk like march. I believe it was like 4 in a row. You had to form a line and walk every day. I don't know how many miles it was from our camp to the ammunition factory. I don't know, but it was quite a walk every day, early in the morning till evening. Hard labor. And we were in contact with Polish people, where they were the supervisors over there, and we were we did the hard labor. And what happened is, as food was quite scarce, of course, people tried at that time to bring something and deal with the Polish people, like you would sell if you had some jewelry, because at that time you were still allowed to bring everything from home. So people would trade, bring a watch or a diamond ring, or later on maybe clothing, whatever they could bring it in, and exchange it for bread or whatever. But this was punishable by death. So what happened is that I did witness quite a few hangings It was death by hanging. And they made quite a spectacle of it. When we entered the camp, coming in from the factory, from the ammunition factory, there were these Ukrainians, and they checked physically everybody, because people would put it in any place. They would hide a piece of bread, or also they used to bring in alcohol, because the ammunition was made with ether, which was based on, there was a base of alcohol. Ether is alcohol. So people would smuggle it in, or they would smuggle in food, a potato, a piece of bread, anything, some butter, whatever they could. And if they caught you with anything, whatever it was death by hanging. And yet, people were desperate enough, knowing all that, they still did it. And that picture I remember very vividly. They, because one of these people worked with me together, and I remember the man very well. And he was one, there were 4, I think, that were hung that day. And he was one of them. I think he was from Vienna, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember. He was a German Jew, but what was a German Jew doing there? I don't know. Anyway, maybe he came to Poland during the Hitler regime. They made everybody in the afternoon, or was it early evening, or was it on a Sunday? I don't remember, but they made everybody come out and witness the spectacle of the hanging. There was a gallows with a step ladder to the gallows, a very horrifying thing. And for the first time when that happened, my father didn't want me to go and see it. He was afraid I was too young to see such a horrible thing. But it was compulsory for everybody to come out. So what my father did is the camp doctor, the Jewish doctor, was a friend of my father. So we asked him to give him a certificate that I don't feel good on this particular day, and I'm sick. So he gave me a certificate. Those that were, being that I was a child and I wasn't feeling well, he succeeded in letting me stay home, because my father was afraid for a minor, for a child at my age, to see such a horrifying thing, how it would affect me. So I did not see it. I was the only one home with my little sister. And the whole camp, the entire camp, had to go out and watch it. And I remember everybody cried terribly when they came home, and they said that they were all, what did they say? You know what that means? But however, I didn't escape seeing it. I did see it. They let them hang for about a few days. And they hung in a place, that gallows was in a place where you had to see it when you came from work, went or came. It was like in the public square of the camp. So you had to see it. And I remember, like rag dolls, they were turning and they were black when I saw them. It was one of the most horrifying things I ever saw, especially people that you know. They let them hang, I think it was for 4 days. So daily, they made you look at it every day. And that side with the heads hanging like this, and they were black from hanging there. It was a sight that I never forget. This I never forget as long as I live. And there were a few other hangings afterwards, also for the same offense. I don't remember whether it was ether that they brought in, or it was food. At this place we had to stay. My father was still in camp, but we were not allowed to be together or even meet. Like women were separate and men were separate, in separate barracks, that is. And on the very first or second day, I don't remember what it was, but we were very new in the camp. And my father, for some reason, whether he wanted to give us something or tell us something, I don't remember what it was. but he came to the camp, not to the camp, I mean to our barrack to see my mother and us. For what reason it was, I don't quite remember, but he came to see us, and he was caught. One of those Ukrainians caught him. And what he did to my father, this was the first horrible sight that I had to see. He was going to shoot him. In our prayer, he made us stay outside, my mother, my sister, and myself, and watch. And then he made him jump. He made him get down on the ground and jump like on all fours, like a what do you call it? Not a squirrel. What are those little things that run in the woods? What runs on all fours? The small ones, the white ones. Rabbits.
Oh, rabbits.
Like a rabbit. He made him jump like a rabbit and do foolish things, you know, to embarrassing things. And then he kept pushing him with his, what do you call it? Not revolver. What do you, with the large gun, what do you call that? Big lock. The rifle? Yeah, with the rifle. And he kept pushing him and beating him and kicking him with those boots that he was wearing. And every minute we were screaming and crying because we thought any minute he was going like this. All he had to do was just push the trigger. That was it. Had he wanted to, if he would feel like it, he would do it. But he just played around, beat him up, and then let him go. But the sight was because we never knew any second what he was going. He could have shot him any minute. And nobody would have questioned it, the legality of it or anything like this. It was within his rights to do it. He could do it. So that was another horrible sight that I had to see. Right, this was, I think, maybe the very first day or the first week that we came to Pyeongki. And that is how it went on over there. I was working. And then they sent us in October 1942. They sent us to Auschwitz. We spent a long time in the trains, cattle trains, completely locked, one on top of the other. People were dying right and left.
Did you know where you were going?
No, we had no idea where we were going. Absolutely not. People were jumping off and getting killed, whoever could, because it was absolutely no water. No food and no water. How long it was, it seemed like an eternity, I don't know, but it was long, very long. There wasn't even any air. And then we arrived in Pyeongki, in Auschwitz. We saw the name Auschwitz, and we saw the people walking around, how they looked. So we knew it didn't take very much to know where we are and how bad it is. Then they took us to, which we thought, they took us to a big place that you take at showers, lots of showers. They separated the men from the women, and that was incidentally the last time I saw my father. They separated us, women on one side, men on the other side. We didn't even say goodbye to each other or anything because we didn't know that this is it. We just went one side and they went the other way, and that was it. And they brought us into this huge place. They took everything away. They shaved us off. I had very, very long hair. I had braids. Little girls were wearing in Europe braids, and my braids were down to here. And they shaved us off completely, like the GIs. And we were brought, they gave us camp clothing. I really don't recall what I got, what kind of clothing, what it was, I really don't. But I believe I did get those wooden shoes. They took our shoes away and they gave us those wooden, those Dutch type of shoes, this kind of shoes. And they had daily, which is called the Zeilapel. If you know what that is, they take you out daily, very early in the morning. I believe it was twice a day to count everybody. It was not really early in the morning, it was more like in the middle of the night, every day, and this was the most horrifying. Actually, we did not work much over there. Occasionally, they would send us to carry bricks from one place, I don't know why, probably just to make us work. We carried bricks, heavy bricks, from one place to another. The food was practically nothing. A very small piece, a tiny piece of bread, a very rough black piece of bread. And what happened is, and the little soup, which was practically water. It was really water. And that was the menu for the day. And if you wanted to save, which we usually, my mother always taught me to save a little piece of bread, I would eat one bite and put another one away. We would share, the beds were like 3 layers, 3 bunks, one on top of the other. And on each bunk there were, I don't remember how many people. I know it was my mother, my sister, myself, and 3 more people that I remember from our hometown. Also a little boy that was my sister's age, who was also born around the same time. Incidentally, he survived, and he has a PhD now, doing very well in, I think, Minneapolis. His father was also killed together with my mother, and his father, and another brother was killed, an older one. His mother survived. She's in Florida. But anyway, this boy survived. He was one of those that was... Oh, and his grandmother was there too. And with us together, we were all on one bunk, sharing one bunk. We were in the middle, and there was one above and one still below. So we would hide a piece of the bread that was left under that, what was it, straw, whatever it was that we were sleeping, that mattress, whatever it was. But unfortunately, most of the time we learned it was, you were better off to finish it because it was stolen. There was no place to put it, and they would steal it. People were so hungry and so desperate, and one was stealing from the other. There was no attics. People didn't, the majority, unfortunately, I'm ashamed to say it, it was a matter of life or death, and they would steal one from the other. They would take it away, the piece of bread that was left. So the best way was to really finish it. And then my sister was a little better off because she was a baby. She was a very, as I said before, she was a very, very beautiful and exceptionally beautiful child. So that in every barrack there was a Jewish couple. You know what a couple is? They were, again, another thing, they were very ruthless, most of them, and they were practically as bad as the Germans, most of them. And I remember being just as afraid of them because they used to beat us up as much as the German SS. Quite of them were very bad. but one from another, not from the block that we were in, not from the same place where we were, not our couple, but another one from another place, a Jewish woman, saw my sister, and she fell in love with her. She was such an adorable child, and she took her more or less as her protege, or whatever you want to call it, because they had more food. They were in contact with the German SS, and they had food. And she always gave her bread, and she gave her more food. But on this, there was an epidemic of scarlet fever in that particular place, and she caught it, and she was put in a hospital. And I believe it's 6 weeks that you have to be in a hospital with scarlet fever. Yeah, right. And occasionally we were not allowed to go in and see her in the hospital, but we could come. It was wooden, there were wooden, was made out of wood, the walls. And I used to go over, I knew where her bed is, and I would knock if nobody saw it. And I used to talk to her. And she would always cry, when am I going back? I want to get out of here. And she would say, well, I was told today I'll go out, I was told tomorrow. And then one day I managed to see her. The door was open, and I went over and I saw her. And she had tears in her eyes that she wants to go back. I don't want to stay in the hospital anyway. Please take me back. I want to go out. And that was the last time I saw her. This was the 6th week. In another day or two, she was supposed to have been released. And that evening, it was the same day that I saw her. In the evening, Mengeles was there. There was a selection in the hospital. We didn't know, but we know we were locked up. We were not allowed to go out that evening. And then afterwards, we found out what it was. That they made a selection, and they usually did it when it was a selection. The rest of the people would be locked up. They wouldn't let us out, but later on, the first thing I did is I went to that hospital, and I knocked on the door because I heard people were removed from the hospital. And I knocked on the door, and there was no answer. She wasn't there anymore. And I didn't know what to do. I myself was a child, and I had to take care because my mother was sick. And being sick over there, that was instant death. You couldn't tell this. You had to, as much as you could, be on your feet and try to look good. People would rub their cheeks to make them look red and bite their lips to look healthy. So I didn't know what to do. It was getting dark. I wasn't allowed to be outside. And I was afraid to tell my mother. I was afraid if I tell my mother that she isn't here anymore. I was walking around and crying, and I didn't know what to do. My mother heard that there was a selection there, but she was too ill to go out. And I knew it could be fatal to come back and tell her that her daughter isn't here anymore. So when I came back, I tried to tell her that I talked to her. I tried to bluff, but I had red eyes. I was crying. But I couldn't bluff my mother too well. She saw through me, and she found out, and she started crying. And, well, needless to say, it went. But we found out there was another woman whose child, who was incidentally also with us together in Pionki. We came together. Her child was the same age my sister was. Also a very beautiful girl, and a very similar story. She was also taken care of by one of the couples, Very, very similar story. And she got ill, the same place, in the, it was supposed to be released on the same day. And one of the couple that was there at the time of the selection said that
So it was the van.
right, they put everybody on the van except my sister and that other girl. She was dressed up according to this woman, and they gave them pink dresses.
Now, did this woman see her, or
The couple saw
couple
her
told
and
her.
told her. They gave them chocolate. With Mengeles, there was another woman. She was incidentally always along with him. There was a woman doctor that was always, most of the time, with him. There was this woman doctor and Mengeles. They had their private car, and they put these two little girls in their private car. They dressed them up in pink dresses and gave them chocolate. And that is all we know. And my mother is under the impression that since they did put them separately and dress them up, that they most likely did not take them to the crematorium. Otherwise, why would they do that? So that's a question mark. For all we know, she might be living someplace in Germany, not knowing who she is. And there is no way of finding out. She might be living, a German woman, knowing nothing who she is. It is quite likely, but then again, we don't know. So it's a very bad thing to have to think for a mother, especially, that her daughter is someplace alive in Germany. She'll most likely never know. She won't know yes or no. There was something else that I was going to tell you about what happened in Auschwitz, and it skipped my mind. While I was talking, I had it in mind. Yeah, about this, I don't know if you heard, but there is a woman here, doctor, a Jewish woman. Pearl is her name, I think. She is a obstetrician, gynecologist, I think. There was a write-up in the Times and in Look magazine a few years ago about her. And she was working with Mengeles, a Jewish or Polish, incidentally. She worked with him. I thought that perhaps she was the woman doctor because she did work with him and she was going along on all these selections. And she is here and everybody knows about it. In fact, they say that Mengeles occasionally calls her. He calls up, he was quite fond of her, and calls her up, tells her how are you, and speaks with her and then hangs up. He never tells her where he is. But he did call her on a number of occasions. And I wrote to that woman doctor one time asking her, but she never replied. Because I had her address. She has an office in Manhattan. And it's not a secret that she was there because it was a write-up in the magazine about her. And I thought that she could maybe shed some light on it, but she never replied. So that was Pionki. Auschwitz. From Auschwitz, we went to Ravensbrück. You've heard of Ravensbrück. When did we go to Ravensbrück? December 1944. We went to Ravensbrück till May 9. No, can't. There's something wrong here. Wait a minute. I must have another piece of paper because we went. Oh, 1944, Ravensbrück from December 1944 till February 1945. And from February 45 till 1945, Malchow. So how long was I in, from December till February, 2 months. Over there again, it was like a transit camp. It was not we did not work there. It was mostly Seilapel. They would count. This was the worst part, that is a million times worse than working. They made us get up in the middle of the night, during the day, any old time, and beating up people. People were dying. If you didn't stay, if your foot wasn't straight, they could kill you or beat you up. The food was more or less the same menu we had in Auschwitz, approximately the same thing.
I have some specific questions on Auschwitz.
Yes.
How did you get there? By train?
The same kind of transportation. They locked us up in those wagons, trains, cattle trains. They used to squeeze as many as possible into one. One was practically right on. There was no room to sit down. You just, like herring, sardines. Yes, I was with my mother. I don't remember how long the trip took. I don't remember. I can't recall it. I could ask my mother. She would probably know, but I don't recall. But I know we got to Ravensbrück.
Was there a selection when you got there?
Where was the I'm trying to think. There was a selection where my best a girlfriend of mine was sent to the gas chamber and she escaped. She's alive now. She was a little girl. That's a very, very unusual story, what happened with her. She was with her mother and, they used to go like this. One went this way, and you usually had a pretty good idea which is which, because you would see that the weaker, the ones, if you saw that you are in the group where the weaker looking people and the smaller ones were the older ones, then you knew this is bad. And this little girl managed to escape back to the other group, which is most unusual. She's alive. I was in school in Sweden with her together. She's in Israel now. Where were we?
The selection.
Yes, I believe that's where the selection took place.
Was it a large camp?
Ravensbrück? Very large, yes.
And
Ravensbrück was a very large camp.
What kind of guard system did you have? How was it set up?
SS.
It was SS.
SS, yes. That was a very rough camp.
Do you know when it was set up?
What year was set up? I don't know, but when we came, it was, or it must have been in existence, or it looked like it was in existence a long time. They had Germans over the political prisoners, prostitutes, Jewish, any nationality, women.
It was all women?
As far as I know, it was all women.
Do you remember any of the names of commanders or officers?
No. No, you remember that what is the German woman's name? That is, it's still going on, isn't it?
Yeah.
That one from I don't recall.
About how many Germans do you think bought it? The number?
I don't know. I saw them mostly during the Zählappell, when they would come with their big long boots and kick and beat everybody. You were scared to even look at them.
Were they all SS?
All SS. Mostly women. Women SS mostly.
Do you remember incidents that you used to accuse an individual Nazi of war crimes?
I don't know names. Oh, incidentally, coming back, there are always people who, for instance, I had 2 instances where I was recognized that I'm a little child, and I was even helped. In Pionki, there was an incident. I told you that we had not the Wehrmacht, the Ukrainians over there, and they checked us every day when we walked in and out, and there was one older man, well, to me he looked older. He had a child my age, couldn't have been too old, but when you're a child, it's relatively looked old. And he said that he has a girl exactly the same age I am at home, and believe it or not, he said she has the same braids and she looks exactly like I do. And he felt very sorry for me. He was not allowed to do this. And every time when I passed by, if nobody would see, when we were ready, where I could carry things out, he would give me, his wife used to send him from home packages, bread, tomatoes. Every time he could, he would give me something, a piece of cake, a piece of bread. And he was not allowed to do this, but it's a very rare instance that somebody really did such a thing. But I happened to remind him of his daughter, and he missed it evidently very much. And he always helped me whenever he could. And one day I was sick, and he noticed that I didn't pass, that the gate over that I wasn't there. And he inquired, and he came to the camp to see me and brought me some cake. Simply because I reminded him of his daughter, and every time he saw me, he was thinking of his daughter, which is a very rare thing. This happened probably one case in a million, and there was another, and I had the same thing happen to me in Malchow again. A Wehrmacht did the same thing because he noticed that I'm the youngest one, a little child, and he a few times we were walking with we had the Wehrmacht over there. Towards the end there was some Wehrmacht over there.
What were the Wehrmacht?
Wehrmacht is military soldiers. Germans, yeah. And he also, when he noticed me a few times, he would give me a piece of bread. And this was, I can't tell you what that meant. This is like today. I wonder if the sweepstakes, winning $1 million on the sweepstakes, would mean as much as getting this piece of bread, because at that time it was really a matter of life and death, having it or not having it. I am jumping. You see what I'm doing? I'm going back and forth because things come.
No, that's fine.
It's very bad to keep it. I can't keep it in a sequence.
That's fine.
I just happen to remember.
That's when we follow general.
Yeah, then you
fine.
maybe
Anything.
can put it in
Right.
perspective.
Right, that's fine. What kind of work do you do?
In Ravensbrück, none.
There's no work?
No, just the work was just the Zählappels, which was much worse even than work, because we had to stay there for hours, and they would count and beat, and we were frozen and hungry, and it was a almost certain death, because they would pick people right and left for absolutely no reason. And that was in Ravensbrück.
Were there a lot of couples there?
There were no couples in Ravensbrück. I don't recall. You mean Jewish couples?
Right.
No. They were only in in Auschwitz. As far as I recall, we had them only in Auschwitz.
Could you describe a day, the routine that you go through in a day?
In Ravensbrück? Somehow Ravensbrück is much less vivid in my mind than the other camps, maybe because I wasn't there that long. And but it was
It's just that there's very little information on Ravensbrück.
on Ravensbrück. I don't have too much information because we did not work. It consisted mostly on going out for Zählappels, and in the Zählappels weren't just twice a day scheduled, but they used to call us for any little thing, any time during the day. In the middle of the night, everybody was asleep. All of a sudden, Zählappel, everybody out. And it was cold. I remember when we came, the night when we came to Ravensbrück, before they put us up in the barracks, they kept us in a tent, a regular tent, a very large one. And we haven't had any food or any drinks. Now again, I don't remember how long, but it must have been very, very long. And we were famished. And we were, but you know, the worst thing is, actually, hunger is not as terrible as thirst. The worst possible thing is when you are thirsty. It's much easier to overcome hunger. But thirst is terrible. And we were very hungry, but the hunger didn't bother us as much as the thirst. And in those tents, they were open, and a tent you could get under. And I remember, now we didn't have any utensils or anything, but if you were lucky to be in the tent next to a puddle of water because it was raining and it was wet, it was muddy, and we could get out. We discovered that if you lift the tent, there was some muddy water over there. And if you could possibly stick your hand out and get some of that muddy water to drink, that was heaven on earth. There was one particular place where this was, and people would kill one another to get at it, to be able to drink some of that mud. And then we stayed there overnight, I think, or maybe more than overnight, I don't recall, but then they put us up in the barracks.
Were a lot of people killed that you saw?
In Ravensbrück, no, I didn't see, except they would beat up a lot of people. I saw a lot of beatings up, which were practically deadly, but I didn't see anybody being killed in Ravensbrück. In Auschwitz, I witnessed a number of selections where they would take people to the gas chambers, and I saw the gas chambers continuously you saw the smoke, and we knew what it was. We saw the smoke going night and day. And I remember there was this one old woman, and she said during Zählappel, somebody said, "You see that smoke?" She would say, "That can't be." She said it in Jewish. "God wouldn't do that. Oh, you stupid little children," she would say, talking such nonsense. "God wouldn't let them do this. These are not Jews being burned. They wouldn't burn Jews. God would never permit such a thing." But we knew quite well what it was. There was no doubt whatsoever in our minds what it was. The question was only, when will our turn be? We knew there were selections. This one was weak and this one didn't look good. They would take them constantly there. And the question was only when. We were only waiting. When?
No, this is Auschwitz.
That was Auschwitz.
You were probably too young, but were you aware of any attempts to escape or any kind of...
Yes, there were. But you are talking about Auschwitz?
Well, Auschwitz or
there were a number of people escaped in Pionki, for instance, and they're here now. They succeeded. Some of them these are the only people that succeeded. that are related to us, they escaped. They went to Poland and hid until the war was over. But the majority was killed. They was very seldom that was because it was barbed wire. However, over there the barbed wire was not didn't have any electric current in it. Pionki. However, in Auschwitz, you couldn't do that. They had guards. Pionki now was not guarded just the way Auschwitz was. It was a labor camp. That's the difference. There's a big difference between a labor camp and a concentration camp. This was a labor camp. There was barbed wire, but some people managed, although it was cut, they had dogs, and they had the Ukrainians. I forgot what the Ukrainians were called. They had a specific name, but I forgot now. They were watching it. But people were sometimes very ingenious. They tried ways at night, knowing when they're changing guards. They did do it. Like I said, those people that I know succeeded, and they are here. But the majority did not, and they were shot on right there and then. Then in Auschwitz, people did try. But over there, it was really, over there was suicide. I think the people who did attempt it wanted simply to get killed because there was no way out. You had guards sitting on the lookout posts, for one thing, with guns, machine guns, and another thing, they were fully electrified, the barbed wire. So really all you had to do is run into it, and this was it. But you will be surprised how very many people tried it. I would imagine it was just a means of suicide. Maybe they had no other means, and this was the only one because there was no way out, absolutely none.
Did Ravensbrück have electric barbed wire?
I believe it did, but there again I'm not quite sure. Somehow, for some reason, Ravensbrück is much more vague in my mind than is I don't know why, but I recall it, but I don't remember too much specifics of how even the camp looked.
So you wouldn't know if there were organized underground?
In Ravensbrück, no. In those camps,
no resistance?
No. That was impossible to understand what the camp looked like. First of all, we had nothing on us. How can you... I mean, we were bare, just a little piece of clothing. Everything, you were stripped completely coming to Auschwitz. They took everything away from us. We had no means of communication with the outside world. We could only talk to the inmates, and those inmates knew just as much as we do. And they had nothing, and there was just no means. You couldn't do absolutely nothing. There was no means of communicating with the outside world.
When you were in there among yourselves, were there any kind of cultural activities that you...
Oh no, my goodness, you couldn't, when you are near death, starvation, fright, extreme fright, you can't possibly, you become really like an animal. I can't say anything about sounding noble that we did not. Because you only thought is, you really become like an animal and think only of your survival. Some people to a lesser degree, I'll say that much, and some people, it's just like today. It depends on the character of a person. Some are nicer basically than others. There are those that would steal from one another. Now, not everybody. I would rather die. I would never do that, no matter how bad it was. I would die. I would rather be shot. But there were those that were even much older than I was, but they did it. They would steal one from another. But I wouldn't say that everybody would do that.
Were there many children there?
No. No, not at all. As I said, we were the one and only transport that came in. What the reason is, I still don't know.
And the rest of the people then came in as political prisoners, more or less? You're saying you were the only transport that came in?
That came in that they admitted was children, I
all
say.
right, all right.
Now, we came in as Jews. That was separate. We came just in as a group of Jews. They also had political prisoners. There were Germans, but we were not in the same camp. They were in Auschwitz. There was every nationality there. Jews from different countries all over Europe. Hungarian, there were the Italian Jews, Belgian, Dutch, French, Romanian, you name it.
Was there any differences between other people and Jews in the camp?
We were not together.
You were never together?
We were on. I was always together only with Jews. I was aware in Ravensbrück that in the same camp there are many other nationalities. There were even prostitutes supposedly and political prisoners.
Did you receive any help at any time from other inmates in the camp?
No, I can't say it did because they couldn't possibly give me any help. I mean, there was nothing to give. They had exactly the same thing I did. What was there to give? We are talking about Ravensbrück now.
Right. There seems to be very little all-around information on Ravensbrück. That's why.
Because I think it was Ravensbrück was basically a transit camp where people did not, I don't know if people stayed too long in there. I don't think there were any crematoriums in Ravensbrück. And I don't think that people were working there. I don't think so, at least.
Were you ill at any time in Ravensbrück? Did you need medical assistance?
No, lucky if I would have this would have been the end of me. That's why my sister isn't here anymore, because she was ill. And once you went to a hospital and you were ill, it was goodbye. I mean, nobody, very few people ever came out.
There was no such thing as now.
Oh, no, good heavens, no.
That was just a question.
No.
I suppose some camps might have had something like that.
Not in Germany.
No. All right, so after Ravensbrück.
We didn't even have names over there. We were numbers.
Right. So.
After Ravensbrück came Malchow. And do you know, I'm ashamed to tell you, I don't even remember the means of getting from Ravensbrück. Now there's another mental block. I don't recall it. I'm trying to remember.
No, you went with your mother.
Yes. I was with my mother. You know, thinking back, there are so many instances that I didn't tell you about how my friends were separated, how they selected. Are separate. It is, you know, there's so much to it. It's so involved that you can't possibly do it in an hour or two. It's impossible because things keep coming back as I just memorize now.
Well, so you don't remember how you left Ravensbrück, right?
No, I don't. But if it's important, I can ask my mother. Now, I know they sent us in that was the only means of transportation is the train, the cattle cars. So this must have been it, I would imagine, because I don't ever recall having any other means of transportation, like buses. So that must have been it. And we arrived in Auschwitz, in Malchow, February 1945.
Did
It
you
was
know where you were
extremely
going?
cold. No, they never told us where. But we arrived, that was a small camp, incidentally.
Now, was this concentration camp?
That was a concentration camp, and we worked over there. That was an ammunition factory. They said it belonged to Krupp, we found out later, but Krupp denied it. After the war, Krupp denied that it belonged to him, but I don't know. But it was an ammunition factory.
Test. So in Naacha, every day you went to work.
Yes, we were in very small barracks. They kept us. I remember the clothes. Just to, they gave my mother. We used to have. I don't remember which camp it was. The clothing consisted of some kind of a overgarment, some kind of a coat, and it had a cross in the back, a white cross in the back. And they gave us a different. I had a black coat with a red sleeve. My mother would have the red coat with the black sleeve. And we used to wear those wooden shoes. You know, those Dutch type of shoes. And it was extremely cold. It was winter and loads of snow and very cold, and we had to walk to work every day, 4 or 6 in a row, very straight row, and SS would walk right along with us. Before work they would wake us up for Zeilapel early in the morning. This took quite a long time. In the middle of the night was pitch dark, and from there, the night before, I think we used to get a piece of bread, very small. They used to cut. They gave us one loaf, one small loaf. I don't remember for how many people. Was it for 8 or for 10? I don't know. But just to give you an idea how bad off we were, we had to cut it ourselves. Now you would form a group, you with 8 of your friends, whomever you would select, and they would give this loaf of bread to you, and we had to cut it up in 8, I think it was 8, but I'm not sure, equal pieces. So we would take a piece of string and measure so that every piece would be exactly the same. And then I used to have the task of calling out. Since I was the youngest one, I was the one that was trusted in camp, but not fully. I had to put my head down like this, cover it on the bed, and then they would call out. So there wouldn't be any cheating that one gets a larger piece, because no matter how much you measure it, from the center it might be a little bigger, then one would get the end. And it was a matter of life and death. That a crumb was even. So I had to call off. One girl would call, who is getting this piece? And I would say, Mrs. Borenstein is getting this one. This goes to Helen. This is going to so and so. That's how it went on. And we would get some so-called soup, which was actually hot water with some kind of cheap vegetable in it.
Exactly where was one?
That was Malho?
Yeah.
It was someplace near Berlin. somewhere near Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
It was a small camp.
You mentioned before Mecklenburg?
Kreis. Kreis is area. Like this, here you would say state, like here it's divided into states. In Germany it's divided into Kreis. Like Bavaria, Munich would be in Bavaria, right? And there's Preußen and there's Ostpreußen. It's divided into sections.
So this was in the Kreis of
Mecklenburg. And we walked every day very far. It was very far. I don't know how many miles, but it was very far to walk to. The walk to that factory was quite an ordeal in itself. And then, you know, if you wear wooden shoes and it's extremely cold and there is snow underneath, what happens, it forms balls on top of the on your shoes, on the sole, on that wood. And it makes it very difficult to walk, and yet you have to keep up pace with the rest of the people. And I remember I used to take a spoon along and scrape it off, otherwise it's slippery. People would fall, and for that you could be killed. At least, if you are lucky, you'd get an extreme beating. If you are less lucky, it would be instant death. But yet you couldn't walk, so you had to risk it. And every now and then, it's what I did and everybody did, is take a spoon and just shove that off, because a real ball, a round ball, would form on the shoe. And they used to punish us for the slightest thing. For one thing, it was very cold.
Was it SS? Again?
SS, women and men, predominantly women. And it was extremely cold at that time, and this is a very cold part of Europe. And they didn't give us anything. There was a stove, an iron stove in the middle of the barrack, but they gave us, I don't remember whether none or very little, coal for heating purposes, and it was very cold. So what the women would do is steal it. Right next to where the kitchen was, there was a big shed full of coal briquettes that they used in the kitchen, and that was extremely dangerous to do. But we would freeze without it. So a lot of women would go out and simply steal it, any opportunity that they had. And those that didn't do it, they wouldn't let you get near the oven. The other inmates, the women, they would say, all right, we did it already so many times, why should we stick our neck out? Which, in a way, it may sound very cruel when I say that now, but when you think about it, it's a matter of life and death. And this girl said, I did it already 3 times, 5 times, risked my life. You want to get one, why shouldn't you do the same thing? You never did it. You have to do it too, otherwise we won't let you get near the oven, that stove. So I did it once. My mother didn't know that I did it. Before the Zählappell took place, it was like a square. There was the kitchen.
No, Malchab also had something.
Oh yes, Zählappell, that was all over. There was the kitchen was on the square, and then was that big shed where they kept the coal supply, and it was very dark in the winter, and I don't know what made me do it, but somehow you sometimes do things on impulse. But I ran in, and I had that black coat with a string around, and I put it all around here, a few pieces. And as I came out, that SS woman caught me. That was during Zählappell. And she started beating and kicking with those, you know, they had those heavy boots those SS boots. They were known for that. Those high, stiff boots that they were wearing. And she started, and I was shivering and crying, and I was as little and as skinny and undernourished as you can possibly imagine. How I survived that, I don't know. I really don't know. But she could have, I was sure she's going to kill me that time. But obviously she didn't. She made me return the briquettes and go back to that Lapel. And the food was very, very bad. I don't know if I should say even less, but very little. And then we had a tremendous amount of punishments. They used to call it sabotage sometimes. They claimed, for instance, at one time, they claimed that one girl brought in ammunition from the factory to the camp. Nobody believes it, but they claimed, they just made up stories, that they found it in the barracks and one girl brought it in. We should say who the girl is that brought it in. They punished us. This must have been in December or January. The snow was up to here. And they punished us, no food. It was for a few days. They made us stay in one place outside without any food in the winter. And we were not allowed, because as you probably know, when it's very cold, if you move around with your feet and hands, if your body moves, you do feel a little warmer. We were not allowed to move. You were not allowed to use a bathroom. That was out. Nothing. Not to move, not to eat. We had to stay there for a few days, freezing. Right across was the hospital. People were carried in constantly. Like flies, people were dying. How we survived, it's unbelievable. It really is. Must have been some kind of a supernatural power that made us survive this. This is one of the worst, I think, experiences, was surviving this incident, because we were extremely hungry, no food, no sleep. We were deprived of everything. We just had to stay there and not move, and they constantly picked somebody out for an offense, such as moving their hands or their feet or their head or whatever.
There were no gas chambers of any sort?
No.
Were there hangings?
No. There were killings. Shootings, but no hangings, no. And from there, we were liberated by the Red Cross. The Red Cross came and brought us to Sweden. Now this is a story in itself. It was quite a sight. They picked, it was not in alphabetical order, but it was according to barracks, because not the whole camp got to go.
Did people have an idea that they were coming?
There were different versions. Some people said that are taking us to the crematorium. Those that are selected are going to the ovens. We did see the buses outside with the Red Cross. But a lot of people said that they wanted that the front is very near, the war is ending, and they don't want any spectacles. They wanted to make as peacefully as possible. So they want to gas us, and that's why they hide it. They made a cross on the bus, but that actually we are going to the gas chamber. A lot of people say believed it, some disbelieved it. We had mixed feelings, mixed emotions. We didn't know. And they selected according to what barrack 1, barrack 2, barrack 4. And then when it came to our barrack, every barrack had room number 1, room number 2, and room number so and so. Our room was the last one to be selected. So ours was already in alphabetical order because only part of it got to go, and we were in this group. And at that time, I remember when they opened the gates, and the SS was over there, and I remember one woman, SS, one of those bad ones, names I don't remember, and she said to us, now I envy you. You are going to be free. We are here, and you are going to freedom. And they opened the gates, and they were Swedes. They couldn't talk to us, the crew and the bus drivers, but we saw that it's an international crew, people that are other than German. And they took us into the buses. They tried to comfort us in as much as they could. They were very polite. But we couldn't talk. No, Swedish is a language not too many people know. So we couldn't possibly converse. But we did. So we went through Germany. We went to Denmark. They took us. We stopped on the way in the buses. And at that time, the Germans even stopped. They brought milk in. We stopped in Lübeck. I believe it's the northern part of Germany. They gave us milk. They gave us some food. And now the Danish people are angels. This was quite something. They really treated us. It's unbelievable. After the kind of treatment we had in Germany, excuse me, I'll get a drink here. They had tables set up. Now this was in May. This was during the war still, that we were liberated. A few days before, but it was still, war was going on. They set up tables for us like you would at a picnic here. It was a place that was like in the woods, it looked like. We arrived at night, and they kissed and hugged us. This was the first time they saw inmates from a concentration camp. And they had tables set up with anything imaginable, loaded with bread and butter and meats and salamis and sausages and any kind of cheeses, and you name it, and it was there. And can you imagine a bunch of people from the concentration camp seeing all of a sudden in front of you all this food? I wonder what their reaction it was, because we were really like wild animals. If you open up a cage and all of a sudden let all the animals out, this is more or less how it looked. Probably even worse, because those animals aren't that starved. And we started eating, and they told us, please, you don't have to, there's plenty, we'll give you more and more and as much as you can. But it's very hard to believe that really you can get as much as you want. So we started eating, and which was a big mistake. This should not have been done the next day. I remember what happened is next day we received lunch. We were in line to receive, and I remember it was a goulash, and very fat with lots of meat, and very delicious one. And the minute I finished eating, I couldn't even get outside. I started vomiting very badly. In fact, on top of everybody that was in front of me, because and I was very, very ill. For quite some time, I really needed medical attention. I was put on a strict diet because they said they should not have given us, that our system was not used to it. It would have been much wiser to give us cereals and food, something that the stomach can easier digest, a stomach that has been empty for so many years, and I was near death. The doctor said it was a remarkable recovery. Then we were not there, we were there a short time. Then we crossed on boat over to Sweden. In Sweden again, we were over there, we were under strict medical supervision. They only gave us light food, the kind that you can digest easily, like cereals, rice. And I remember a lot of women, those that weren't sick, complained, why do you give us, now that we are free already, all you give us is a little cereal and a piece of bread and a roll. We want to eat, we want meat. And they were also very, very nice and polite, the Swedish people. And they tried to explain. They said, it's not that we don't want to give it to you. You'll get enough, don't worry. There'll be plenty of meat and salamis and sausages and anything that you want, but your stomach cannot take it. You must gradually accustom your stomach to the normal diet, because you haven't had a normal diet for so many years, and you can it can be very, very dangerous, which a lot of people died. I was one of the lucky ones, but a lot of people died afterwards. I don't suppose, this was in Sweden. This is the end of the war, so I suppose this is where more or less you might say my story ends.
Right. Well, briefly, what have you done since you were liberated?
Since I was liberated?
Have you come to America?
No, I was for 2 years in Sweden. My mother worked in Stockholm, and I was in a school in Sweden. Specifically, that was a religious and Orthodox school run by a certain Rabbi Jacobson, he would say, from Sweden. Very, very noble family. Him and his wife really sacrificed themselves. They were so dedicated, and the school was run beautifully. We had a very good school. It was a Hebrew school where we were taught Hebrew and Talmudic studies, and also secular. Because you see, we could not enter a regular school because for so many years we were already at a certain age, and yet we didn't fit in any place. So this was a school specifically for us, both religious and secular studies, and a great stress was put on Hebrew. And we were, after 2 years, fluent in Hebrew. We were not allowed to speak anything but Hebrew. Everything was taught in Hebrew. And Mrs. Jacobson, his wife, she lived there permanently with us. She was like, say, a mother, because all these girls had I was one of the lucky ones. I had a mother. Most of the children had absolutely nobody. Some had a sister someplace, a cousin. There were some that had absolutely nobody, not a cousin, not nobody whatsoever. So I was, I think, for 2 or 2.5 years in the school. And that was a very nice school, I must say. I enjoyed that school. Everybody was very nice, especially Rabbi Jacobson and his wife, and I made very many friends because we were all in the same boat. Incidentally, that whole school, our school, went to Israel. I was, I think, the only exception. I did not go. I wish I could find where all these, it's funny, through the years we lost contact, and we used to correspond for some time, and then I lost contact, and I wish so much I could, but they are all married now, and they have different names. They were little girls at the time, and now they're all married women like I am. And I can't get in touch with it. If I only would find one, it would be so nice and interesting. But the school, I had the relatives in Germany. My mother's relatives survived. Her sisters and brothers survived, most of them, some of them. And they insisted we should come to Germany and join them. Incidentally, we found out in Sweden that my father died in the concentration camp. We had a witness who saw him die. He actually survived. He died like 2 or 3 days after the war. It was the same thing. The English, that was someplace near Hamburg. This was the English occupation there. And he ate something, and he got diphtheria, and he died. He was in a hospital about 2 or 3 days after the English entered Hamburg, and he died. He survived the war and died right afterwards. And well, I was in Sweden till 1947, June or July, sometimes in the summer I left, because my mother's sisters and brothers insisted that we should come and join them. So we did, and I was in Germany, in Munich, from end of 47, like, I don't know, oh yeah, I came to must be like October, November, the end of 47, and I was in school in Germany. I finished school there, high school, and I went to college in Germany. I started just one semester, I think. And from there I came to the United States. And I got married, and I have 2 boys. And I went to school. I went to City College, and I worked in an office. I went to school in the evening. And that's about it, and I'm a housewife now.